Hi, guys. Welcome, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good day. All right. Yes, I got my hair cut, and yes, I dyed it red. So I'm going through something. It's called Getting Through This Case. And I was like, I need some change. So let's talk about everything. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. I did. I took some time for some self care. I hope you guys took some time for self care, spent time with families. Did you guys get a Christmas tree yet? Wow, we got a tree. And let's just say the trees this year are very picked over, and there's not as many as there normally are because apparently the world and the state of the world. And our tree is so small. I'm slightly sad about this. We couldn't find a larger tree because there's literally a tree shortage. I didn't know there was a tree shortage. We usually always get a tree the weekend of Thanksgiving, and we didn't go this week. And then yesterday, all there was small trees. I'm sad. I'm sad. I wanted my big Christmas tree. Anyways, welcome everyone. I hope you had a good weekend. Okay, before we get into what's going on with the case today, I want to bring you up to speed about some stuff that happened at the end of last year or end of last week. And I wanted to also talk with you about how over the weekend I had the opportunity to speak with someone who's actually at court, and they are covering the case for their podcast. And the podcaster had reached out to me. This is an anonymous podcaster. They don't say who they are. It's a female, but she runs a podcast called The Sojo Files. And it's on Apple. It's on Spotify. I think it's on Amazon. I don't even know. All the different platforms that offer podcasts. She does local cases in Arkansas. And she had reached out to me because some of her followers had told her that I covered the Duggars. And so she and I got to talking, and she was answering a bunch of questions. She's like, hey, I've been there, and I just wanted to, like, if you had any questions, I'd love to offer this. Just tell people to check out my podcast. So make sure you check out the podcast. She does really great notes. And so what she does is she takes notes and then she reads back and forth, like how the case was being, like the questions that were being asked by the lawyers and how people were responding. It was super helpful to actually talk with her and get a feel for the overall tone in the room and just get a better understanding of like what people are sensing, feeling, all of that. Yeah, it's called the Sojo Files. I don't know how she didn't know about me. She said she found out about me through her followers, and she said that she doesn't just she doesn't really cover the Duggars. She was just doing this because of this case. She honestly told me that locally people don't care about the Duggars. They don't like the Duggars. The Duggars are like a big stain on them, and nobody's like really thrilled about this, to be honest, is what she said. But there was a lot of things that she brought up. So I just wanted to answer a couple of questions or bring up a few things. Okay. So she gave me the full witness list. And by the way, a full witness list doesn't mean that all of these witnesses will testify. These are just the ones that were provided to the court of people that could testify. Okay. So the witness list included Howard Aycock, who was for the prosecution, Randall Berry, Gerald Faulkner, Amber Calmer. So those, they already testified. Marshall Kennedy, Roger Smith, David Tyler, Clint Branham, who testified this morning, Michelle Bush, James Holt, Bobby Holt, Jeffrey Pryor, Matthew Waller, Jeff something, Jill Jedediah, Robert Bertilli, Robert Franklin, William Martin, Rich Harrell, Kevin McLean, Josh McConnell, and William Meisel. She's actually sending me messages right now. So those are the ones that were on the list, and I'll tell you who's testified so far. So who has testified is Howard Aycock, Gerald Faulkner, Amber Calmer, Marshall Kennedy, Jeffrey Pryor, Matthew Waller, Bobby Holt, Jim Holt, and Clinton Branham. So those were all the ones that went for the prosecution. And today, for the rest of the afternoon, she just said that we'll expect Michelle Bush, who is their forensic person, to testify. Okay. So let's talk about what we talked about over the weekend. So over the weekend, there was some... Okay, so one of the big things that we talked about was the tone in the courtroom. So if you want to like listen to what she does on the podcast, you can go ahead and do that. But for the podcast or for the tone in the room, it was apparently mostly media. Not a lot of Duggars there. In fact, there's an entire area where the family can sit, and it's designated for the family, and not all family were sitting there. Austin appeared agitated throughout the entire hearing. Joy actually was heard sobbing, I was told. And then I also was listening to the podcast, and it sounds like some of the jurors were crying. So when they were doing the testimony about what was found on this computer, apparently jurors were seen wiping back tears, crying. They were visibly upset. A couple of the guys even looked upset. Two of the females were like crying while everything was being described. The monitors were turned off in the gallery, so people in the gallery were not seeing any of the images. Only the jurors saw any of the images and the videos. Now, in relation to what was found on the computer in context of did Josh watch it? So the technical forensic expert was very, very, very specific. And every single image has a hash value, and it can tell you based on how the coding is, if the image was viewed on the computer, if it was downloaded, like how it got there. And so basically the forensic expert flat out testified that Josh actually watched some of these videos directly on his computer. They were not streamed. They had been downloaded. He had to use a physical program to watch these videos, which were installed onto the computer. And that even though there was not evidence of these videos in total, so one of the sticking points a lot of people had was that for some reason the videos weren't there anymore. That does not matter because there was evidence that they were. And so when someone goes into the computer, they can basically go into what's called the cache thumbnail drive, and it stores all of the thumbnails cached from when you open something on your computer. So if you watch a video or if you watch a movie on your computer, you click it, and once it downloads, it creates an image. That image is then stored in a hidden folder called the thumbnail cache drive. And that image is sort of a snapshot of what that content is. So even if you delete the evidence, like the video, the thumb drive image is going to still be in that folder. And if you don't clear out that folder, the evidence remains. So think of it sort of like as a digital fingerprint. So there was all of these videos that had been downloaded. So anyways, the thumbnails stuff were downloaded. Let's see. What else was on that podcast that I was listening to? So did they view these? Yes, he viewed these. There was evidence that he viewed them because of how the coding was left and all of the different values that are on these codes. So it's a highly technical case, but according to the forensics expert for the DOJ, she's chewing on a bone. As a software engineer, all this forensic stuff is pretty much 100% accurate. Thank you. Okay. So basically, when that folder wasn't cleared out, Josh left trails of evidence showing that the content existed on his computer. So it doesn't matter that it wasn't there. They actually have the 3 days that they were connected to his computer that show that he downloaded. So they know that it was downloaded. They know that he watched it. They know that the thumbnail drive was image was left on his computer. They also, something that I missed when I was listening to the podcast was there was multiple emails that were sent from Covenant Eyes. So Covenant Eyes is that application that Josh Duggar had installed on his computer and on his laptop and on his iPhone. Covenant Eyes had been installed to monitor his activity online. And so when he was online in 2017, he was attempting to access the uTorrent network and the uTorrent, which is the peer-to-peer network sharing systems. And then he also tried to access the Tor browser. So when he was trying to access those, what was happening was he was getting blocked. So he would try to access it, and then his computer would not allow him to get into it. And then an email was being generated, which was then sent to Anna, that showed that he had attempted to download and get into BitTorrent and download the Tor browser. Okay. So he has been attempting to use this. And also in 2017, he used the BitTorrent network to download a movie for his kids. Now, I want to say this very clearly, is that these peer-to-peer sharing networks, and I actually went onto uTorrent's website to get a better understanding of how these are. They are not free. You have to actually pay for a subscription to be on there. There's like premium, and there's, you can be anonymous and not anonymous, but you have to pay to be a part of this world. And then basically what it does is it splits up all the different like fragments of a into the peer group. So like all like fragments of the files are all like split up all over, and it's supposed to like increase the downloading speed so that like all the downloading isn't happening on your computer. And it like also is splitting up the files so that if you're doing something bad, not all the pieces of the file are together. And then in order to watch it, you actually have to have a program that takes all the different pieces, puts it together into an actual file outside of the torrent file. Okay. So people that used these files were really popular when illegal downloading of movies and videos was a thing, and songs back, like think Napster. So back in the early 2000s, these peer-to-peer networks were super, super common. They're not as common anymore, but if he was on these networks back in 2017 downloading a child's movie, he's illegally downloading it. So he's basically stealing a video from Disney or whoever it is via copyright to get around the copyright so that he owns it. Okay. Anyways. Now, when it comes down to, so he's been trying to access these sites for years. He's been trying to go onto the dark web for years. Covenant Eyes is not allowing him. And so what's happened is that he needs to find a way in order to. Okay, sorry about that. Free to break. Okay, so anyways, he attempts to get into the system for a very long time, and he can't because he's trying to basically get into a system that Covenant Eyes is blocking. Okay, so he then has to find a way to bypass that. And so then he realizes that in order to truly get around it, he can use what's called Covenant. He can use a Linux partition, and he can do it on his work computer, because then he wouldn't be putting up the partition on his own stuff. Okay. Okay. So when it comes to, so the jurors were crying, everything was viewed on his computer, thumb drive images, there was evidence this was all on his computer, remote access, impossible via the way that this was set up, because it is when you log into a computer, when you have a Mac, and this is for Mac users, it has a pop-up screen and you actually like type your password to get into your desktop, because on a Mac, you can actually have split hard drives, like you can have split users, kind of similar to that. So when you're on an HP and you have a split hard drive with the Linux partition, you choose if you're going to log into the Windows side or if you log into the Linux side. In order to get to that screen, you have to boot the computer up, meaning that you would not be able to remotely access this getting into the Linux side. Not only that, even if he would have been remote accessed, it means that the videos would still have been playing on his computer. And because the videos were not streamed, it wouldn't have made sense. And it would have been a really, it doesn't make any sense for anyone to have done that. And it wouldn't be like, it would just be easier for them to do it themselves. They would have had to do so much work to even do that. One, they couldn't get into it. Two, it just doesn't make sense. Okay. And there was literally no evidence that this happened. And in order to get into the Linux partition, he had the same password as his bank account, as his Instagram account, previously the same password for the Duggars Instagram. It was also used for other social media throughout the years. Iterations of the same password for the partition had been used by Josh Duggar for at least 4 to 5 years. So password protected, you have to boot it up from the outside. Thumbnail drive that they were talking about, useless, cleared. They found nothing on it, not relevant. So the mysterious thumb drive file, irrelevant. There was some discussion that a document came up with Amy Duggar King's name. I wasn't actually able to verify. Anyone else but the Sun posted that. So I don't even know if that's true, and it wasn't relevant. So Josh Duggar's assertion that there was a thumb drive, they said they cleared the thumb drive. They apparently made all kinds of discussion and just like obsessions about a router. Routers are never going to provide any relevant evidence to a case and have never been used in any of the cases that they've ever had. So they don't have to analyze a router. The podcast host was basically saying that they spent a lot of time on things that just didn't matter, literally didn't matter. And they would get like obsessed with these little tiny pieces of information that were absolutely irrelevant. And the overall tone was mostly that people were just annoyed, irritated, and not really like didn't really seem that like, oh, this isn't that, there's so much evidence, right? So there's also a reflection of Josh in the computer screen. So another piece of evidence that they had was that Josh Duggar was at the computer, and when he was sitting at the computer on the 16th, he actually had a red hat on. Somehow during this time, he somehow takes a photograph of himself on the computer, and it's like a picture of the computer screen, and you can see Josh Duggar wearing a hat in the reflection on the screen in the photo that's found on his computer. Only a couple hours later, Josh Duggar goes to Lowe's with Anna, and he takes a selfie wearing the exact same hat. The photograph of Josh in the hat is within 45 minutes of something being downloaded. I can't remember what. So Josh Duggar is literally physically seen. It was not a mega hat. This is not true. The podcast host said that this is not true. It was not a mega hat that she could tell. And she also said that Anna never looked upset or stormed off at any point during the hearing, that she didn't look mad at all when her address or whatever it was that was shown. There was Derek sitting up in the front, Joy and Austin in the back. That's about all I know. So then after they finally I said, did it seem like his defense was plausible? And they said no. Absolutely not. There's such overwhelming evidence that Josh did this, from the timestamps on the computers, from the photographs, from the fact that the files were found on his computer, to the fact that he watched the videos on his computer. Every single thing that they want to try to argue just doesn't even make sense. And the host was like appalled that they didn't really take a plea deal. Like, there's just such overwhelming evidence that he did this. So anyways, now on to today. So they finished yesterday on Friday. They finished everything up on that side. And then another thing before I get into today's testimony, I was over on my Instagram. Okay. So I just want to pick up a few things on my Instagram that I covered. So, let's show you something. Over the weekend, I actually did a poll on my Instagram about if you guys thought he was guilty or not. Over the weekend, I actually here's the results. 17,000 of you on my Instagram, which, by the way, thank you guys so much for following me on Instagram. I'm at almost 70,000 followers over on Instagram. So make sure you're not subscribed. If you haven't followed me over on Instagram, that's by far it's my second biggest platform, and it's the one that I like the most outside of YouTube. I'm also a little bit more off the cuff there, so I can like swear and I can be a little bit more like me. I don't have to deal with like the advertising, making my sponsors happy kind of thing. So yeah, 17,000 of you guys actually voted for guilty. Now, I have to say something here is that I'm not going to out anyone. I don't want to say who, what, where, when, or why, but you should know that there are fundamentalists that are friends with the Duggars that voted guilty. There were family members, extended family members, that voted that Josh was guilty. There was a lot of people that you might not know of, or who you may know of, that voted that Josh was guilty. There was influencers, literally influencers with really large platforms that voted on this, that said he was guilty. And I also want to note that the 144 that said not guilty, I would say about 80% of those people actually sent me a message and said they did it by accident. So on a poll, if you accidentally hit it, I got like, I'm telling you, about 80% of these were said, oh, this was fake, or I did this by accident. I 100% think he's guilty. There were some people that I'm sure were, but I didn't, in terms of like if any of the Duggars voted that he was guilty, no. Like, I didn't see any of the Duggar family show up at all. In fact, I didn't even see like any of their friends vote not guilty, although I did see some of their friends vote guilty, right? Which is pretty phenomenal. But as I can say, you can't actually change your vote. You can't change your vote on Instagram stories. Sorry, Danny. 80% of them were accidents, so don't be too mad at them. Okay. So most people believe that Josh is guilty. Now, this story has captivated a lot of people. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about next up. So we got the results for that. There was something else from my Instagram I wanted to talk to you guys about. I think it had to do with, I don't know. Was there something in here? Maybe that was it. Oh, Hilary Spivey. Hilary Spivey, you guys, this is so ridiculous. I can't even believe this. Hilary Spivey actually like defended Justin. So remember Justin's smiley face? And then I promise we'll get into what's going on in court today after I do this thing about Hilary Spivey, because she has been mum about anything, but she talked about praying for Anna and defended her son-in-law, Justin, for smiling and giving a thumbs up. She was like literally getting in fights with people on her Instagram. So this is what she said. Thank you for all your friends and family for understanding the difficulty of this situation. Due to helping out in other ways, I was not able to be there for Anna as much as I wanted to. I don't think any of us, not even myself, can understand what she's going through. I would like to ask for all of you to remember her in your prayers during this time. Don't forget, she also has a newborn that she's caring for as well, and she was done an amazing job through this trial and could sure use our prayers. As far as Sweet Justin goes, if folks only knew him, they would never make the negative comments they have. He doesn't have an unkind, mean bone in his body. He saw the cameras up ahead and commented to me that he was going to be positive so that there would be no negativity documented. And his heart was so right, but surely people understand with the media, you can never win. Once again, thank you all who pray for Anna as well as the extended family. They sure need it and are greatly appreciated. To which I say, what about the children? No discussion about the children in any of this. It's all about Anna and Josh, the poor persecuted souls. Okay. Anna has been described as stoic. She has not broken any sort of she has showed little to no emotion throughout all of this. Apparently, Josh stands up and goes over to Anna frequently in between breaks. He gets up out of his desk. He smiles. He is jovial. He's definitely not acting like someone that is facing something serious like he is. And overall, just not really that acting very serious. Let me just quick close this door. Okay. Read the room, Hilary. Okay. Now, for today, so this morning, they had 3 witnesses. So I gave you guys the list of witnesses, right? Now, I want to be clear that when someone actually is a witness, that doesn't mean they testify. It just means that they could testify. So I actually have a theory. They were originally going to call all of Josh Duggar's employees to be witnesses for Josh Duggar in this case. I have a theory that when Matthew Waller basically went around the Duggars or went around prosecution and testified to something completely different than what he told the prosecutors, I'm pretty confident that the prosecutors, in my opinion, abandoned any additional acquaintances connected to the Duggars or friends connected to the Duggars that would not be influenced by the Duggars. I don't think they wanted a repeat performance. So I don't think they wanted to call William Meisel, anyone that Jim Bob Duggar could potentially influence, like Randall Berry, who still works at one of the car lots, or even one of the other witnesses, Joshua Williams. They didn't want a repeat performance. Not only that, I don't think they wanted to put anyone on the stand that lacked any sense of credibility. So, not putting on someone that has a criminal history. Now, that material witness that they were supposed to call never called him. So I don't think they even needed him. Perhaps they were like putting it in their back pocket in the event that something went sideways in the case. But I feel like the prosecutors have a pretty good pulse on how this trial is going. And it's not, I believe, going in the favor of Josh. Now, because Jill did not testify, it's likely that she might not be called. The defense is not likely to call a lot of witnesses, maybe 3 or 4. So Josh's side isn't going to be calling a lot. Right now, the forensic expert is up. And if you paid attention at all during my coverage, you know that this forensic expert is really inept and not very, she didn't understand BitTorrent, and she was literally writing in a document which was submitted to the court that BitTorrent worked in a way that it just factually does not work in. And when she submitted this declaration about how BitTorrent worked and how these programs worked and how torrential downpour worked, which is how they extracted all the information from Josh's computer, the Department of Justice responded with like 15 pages of codes. So that was another thing that was presented as evidence into the court. All of Josh Duggar's codes, every single code of every single search he ever did, all the searches that he did on this, There was so much evidence that it was him, from the pictures to the photograph in the computer screen to bypassing covenant eyes to just, there was a lot. Okay. Oh, okay. Now, in terms of whether or not, let's get on to today. So today in court was the prosecution rests. So the prosecution put on 3 more witnesses this morning, and I've been able to get a little bit of understanding from the podcaster, from the Sun, and from other outlets about what happened in court. First of all, I got to take a breath. I'm trying to do this as fast as possible. Okay. First of all, the first witness this morning, I believe, was Clinton Branham. Now I'll show you who was actually in court today. Okay, so Anna and Josh were there. First of all, Anna's wearing apparently an awesome dress. Don't read too much into the color red. It's literally just a color. One of my subscribers actually told me it's a Calvin Klein dress. It's made out of scuba material and it's super comfortable and it's very flattering for, she just had a baby. Red is actually not a prohibited color by the Duggars. It's not a power color. It's literally just the color red. So I don't really think it's all that I don't know. I'm not that excited. It's just, she looks nice. It looks like the kind of dress you would wear to work. Okay. And then Josh got a new suit, apparently. So Anna looks nice. And everyone on my Instagram was like, oh my God, she's wearing a red dress. Oh my God. Okay. Now, there she is again. Nothing super exciting about the dress. I think she looks really nice. I think, Anna is doing the best that she can at this point. And I don't think we really truly understand what's going on in her brain. She's still very, very, very brainwashed. And at this point, she's going to stand by her husband. Okay. Derek Dillard was back in court today. Now, in regards to the notes, he has this thing that he's walking in with, which is a portfolio, a leather portfolio. It's for the University of Arkansas. I was told he's actually not taking notes in court. He puts it underneath his bench. That's what I was told, that he's not really taking notes in court. Joy and Austin were there. And apparently Joy spoke to Josh after Bobby Holt testified this morning very briefly. Joy's been very emotional in court and confused. And Austin has been described as extremely angry, not interested. Not interested. Red is just a color. It's just a color. Okay. But just to show you, Republicans like the Duggars love the color red. Anna has worn red a lot. The Duggars love the color red. Their kids all wore red as kids. Red is just their color. They like the color red. Why is Austin there? He is not there to support Josh. He is mad. He wants the truth. Okay, so red is also not a forbidden color by the Duggars. It's not a forbidden color in the cult. It's just the color red. Okay, I know. I do not think there's a chance he'll get out of this. No. And who is taking care of her babies? I have zero idea. I'm sorry, sweetie. She says, is there that baby during the day? I would never leave my newborn that long. P.S. Great. She has, okay. Let's not mom shame her. If she was going to work, she would go to work. Whether she's standing by her husband or not, she has a right to be there. Let's just not mom shame her. I'm sure the baby is being well taken care of. I have no doubt someone in their lives is taking care of the baby. This trial is only a week long. Okay. Yes, red is a sketchy color for the FLDS. So the FLDS does not like the color red, but red in the IBLP is not. Jana was briefly at the hearing today, and so was Jessa. So apparently Jessa showed up for a very brief time, was very jovial and happy. James, little brother James, showed up, as well as one of the other brothers. Who was the other brother? Who did they say showed up from the Duggars? Jessa, Joy, Jana was there very briefly, I guess, in and out, didn't really stay very long. So Jessa was there. Jessa left court. Jason Duggar was there. Claire Spivey was there. Justin Duggar. Oh, Claire Spivey was not at the trial last week. They said that was not correct. Oh, they're correcting things now. Will they correct the fact that Anna wasn't upset? Maybe not. Okay. So Jason Duggar was there. And so Derek, James, Austin, Joy, Anna, Jessa, we're all there. Maybe Jason. Okay. No John David. Jedediah cannot be in the gallery because even if he doesn't testify, he's still classified as a witness. And then who else? Jill can't also be in the gallery because even if she doesn't testify, she's classified as a witness, and they can actually only be in the gallery until and after their witness testimony happens. Okay, now let us go into what happened this morning. So the prosecution rested this morning. They actually are done. So 3 more witnesses were called this morning. 3 witnesses, one who testified to Josh Duggar's prior actions around what he did to his sisters, and then 2 that testified to Josh Duggar's technical skills. So Bobby Holt, Jim Holt, and Clint Branham testified today. So one of the things that his defense was wanting to claim is that Josh is stupid, and Josh doesn't have technical skills, and Josh doesn't know anything about computers. Well, that's not true. So apparently Clint Branham, who is actually a friend of Josh Duggar, he works in technical cybersecurity. He and Josh run in the same circles, and they would discuss technology and politics when they would get together. And he said that Josh is more advanced than the average tech user, and that he thought Josh would be comfortable installing his own computer programs. Like, you guys, is it really hard to install computer programs? I mean, some of this stuff is not easy, but for the most part, installing stuff is not that difficult if you can follow basic instructions. And someone had brought up, and I just want to point out that a lot of you guys, one of my followers who has a technical background was bringing up that a lot of the points that the defense were making were just not even relevant, not even interesting, like how the remote access would work and all their tiddly different things. Ridiculous. And in terms of how technical some of this stuff is, it's really not. I mean, even using the dark web is not that difficult, although Josh had to know exactly where to go. So that's the one thing that tells me I believe he's been doing this for a long time, because you don't just like download the Tor browser and then just happen to find the worst stuff on the internet. That's just, to me, red flags. So Clint basically calls him more advanced. He actually talked about how he had a conversation with Josh about Covenant Eyes in 2010. And so Covenant Eyes obviously is this big program that all these fundies have on their computer because they all think that looking at women is bad. So apparently several times during the years, there was some reports that said that, Josh had gotten some flagged content. And he apparently had gotten some concerning content that was found on his Instagram. Now, I want to tell you guys a little bit of a secret. Josh Duggar actually has a old work Instagram. And this one is hysterical because I'll show you what the work Instagram is. Because someone asked me, like, what would have pinged on Instagram? Well, it's probably who he's looking at. And because it's pinging as mature, and it's also pinging as, you know, they get freaked out if girls are in bathing suits, okay? So he's like having conversations with Clint about Covenant Eyes. But I want to show you this to just give you an indication of what Josh could have gotten in trouble with at any point in time. So this is his Instagram from his old work. So this is from the car lot that he previously had. It's still up. It's called Duggar Cars. And it is the same address as his old Duggar Automotive that Josh ran. This is the one that you saw on like 19 Kids and Counting when Josh was there. This was this shop, okay? Quality pre-owned, blah, blah, blah. All right. So that's the thing. Now I looked in on there to see like who is he following? Okay. One of the people that account is following is this woman. So this woman, who has literally nothing to do with cars, is being followed by Josh. Okay. These photos would ping Covenant Eyes as being questionable. Okay. Now, who else is he following? And what are the other photos that she has on her Instagram? These are the photos that she has on her Instagram. Totally innocuous to us, right? Totally innocuous to us. None of us even care about this. But this is something that Covenant Eyes would think as like too much. And again, why doesn't he realize that people check his follow lists? Okay, but that's not the only person. And don't harass this poor woman. She's innocent. She has nothing to do with this. She's a beautiful woman that happens to be followed by this account. And then there's another one that he follows, and it's another woman, and it's a lot of like, she's busty, she's gorgeous. But again, what does she have to do with cars? Okay. So obviously Josh Duggar has had an affinity for looking at women, and I think Josh, we'll get there after I'm done with this, but I have some theories about Josh. Okay. So while he's apparently talking about Covenant Eyes with Clint Branham, Josh Duggar and him talk about how there's different ways that people can get around Covenant Eyes, and you can bypass Covenant Eyes by installing a Linux partition. So Clint says that he and Josh have a conversation about how installing a Linux partition will allow a user to get around Covenant Eyes because Covenant Eyes cannot read the Linux partition. He says that the conversation with Josh about Covenant Eyes and this happens in front of Jim Holt. Jim Holt then testifies to the exact same conversation. So he says you can use this by installing the Covenant Eyes. And then apparently he gets cross-examined by Travis Story, and he says the conversation happens in 2010. It happens with Jim Holt, and he says Linux is a way to bypass it. And then Story tried to ask him, well, do you think Josh knew how to write codes and command lines? And Bram said he wouldn't be surprised, but Josh hadn't told him. So he believes that Josh possesses enough skills in order to be downloading and installing these types of programs. Okay. Anyways, even if they're scammers, whatever, he's following girls that technically Josh should not be following. You know what I'm saying? Josh is supposed to be like a good, honest Christian man. Anyways, Jim Holt then testifies to the same thing. So Jim Holt comes on and he talks about how he has a conversation with Josh in 2010. And Josh actually asked during this conversation how he would set up a Linux partition. Gelfand apparently cross-examined him, and he brought up the Linux conversation was more tech-savvy. It says that Clint's more tech-savvy than he was, but he's not sure about Josh. And they focus on very irrelevant information. Claiming then the prosecution asked Holt to explain that Josh Duggar would help with graphics on the computer. He helped put together and edit commercials when he was a teenager. And he noted that all the work was done. But then Gelfand was like, well, all of that was done on a Mac, not on an HP. You guys, I'm just going to say this. I have both HPs. I've worked Windows and I've worked Macs. The systems are not really that entirely different. It doesn't take a rocket science to learn Windows. It's pretty simple. Anyways, Bobby Holt also testified as well. This is not true. The prosecution rests their case. Okay, I want to answer this question. The prosecution has rested, meaning they have called the witnesses that they are going to call, and that means, it doesn't mean the case is over, it means they've rested. Now it's the defense's turn to call their witnesses. Once the defense rests, then the case is over. It could go to the jury tomorrow. So the prosecution has rested. It's on the defense now to bring on their witnesses. That's all it means. It's not an error. Just wanted to clarify that. People are getting very confused about that. So I just wanted to clear that up. Okay. So right now the defense's people are testifying, and we'll get there in a second. And I apologize that I'm like all over the place today. Katie is completely correct. I'm a lawyer, by the way. Okay. Another thing that was brought up before we get into Bobby Holt's testimony is that some of you guys were wondering, will Josh be remanded to the prison immediately upon conviction? It depends on the judge. And will the sentences, if he's convicted, run concurrently or consecutively? Let's get there in a second, but he might not actually be taken into custody upon a guilty conviction. So if he's found guilty, he could go back on his monitor and stay on monitoring. If there's a concern that following a guilty conviction that he might hurt himself, or if they believe he might be like a risk for other people hurting him, they might take him into custody. So if it's a safety issue, they might say, Josh, we're going to put you in custody until your sentencing. Sentencing is generally within either a few weeks or a few months from the time of the conviction. They're also able to file their post-trial motions, like if they want to do an appeal or whatever. That doesn't, or mistrial or whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't prevent the sentencing from happening. But if they believe that he's like either a risk to himself or someone else is a risk to him and it's a safety issue, or if he's a flight risk, they can take him in and say, okay, you're remanded. Or they can put him back on an ankle monitor. It's up to the court to make the decision. It's up to the judge. In state cases, genuinely when this happens, yes, they're typically remanded and they're taken into custody. Now, that was the other thing we'll talk about is where will he go? There's only so many places in the United States. There's only so many prisons he could be sent to based on the kinds of convictions that he has. Okay. Well, because they care if he hurts himself, because the point is for him to serve his time out. We don't want him, because then there's no justice. That's like, yes, he had to give up his passport, but you can buy fake passports. I mean, there's lots of ways of getting around that. Okay, so they bring up Bobby Holt. Bobby Holt does the same testimony as she does on Monday, and she talks about how Jim Bob Duggar and Michelle called her over back in 2003 to tell her that Josh had done things to his sisters. I don't want to go into graphic detail about what she testified to. You guys know from last week what she said, what she talked about. The difference here, obviously, is that Joy Anna was in court hearing this. So that's horrible. So there was the Jane Doe's 1 through 4, his previous history of what he had done. He went back to a troubled youth here. She was on the stand crying at various times. Apparently, his defense was bringing up that it was old. It was 20 years ago. And did she really remember? And were they ever chaperoned together? And why would Josh actually confess to you about this? Okay. And then she also said that he got mad at her because she wouldn't cooperate with defense. So apparently someone from the defense side wanted to talk to her and she didn't want to talk to them. And she then was on redirect she said that she didn't speak to the defense because she wasn't given permission to. So once she's under the subpoena by the feds, she has to have permission to speak to the other side. If the feds have her under subpoena, and they say you're not allowed to speak to the defense, she can't break that requirement. And she said that she was offered money to speak, which gave her concern. So someone offered her money, which gave her concern, which I'm guessing must have been the defense, because the government does not offer money for testimony. And Marshall asked if Holt remembered the conversations with Josh, and Holt said, "You don't forget conversations like that." So he testifies about Bobby Holt brings up, she gave the same details that she did the first time, and nothing really changed for that testimony. She says, "I give her props for being true to the law." So Josh doesn't get to see the videos so the videos are not viewed by Josh, they're viewed by the jury. So the jury has their own monitors. I don't know if the monitors are in the jury box with them, but he doesn't get to see them, and it's just the jury that sees them. The podcaster said that the description of it was very detailed, and I don't want to go into the descriptions of these videos. It's horrible. Okay, so now they have let's see. They have their witnesses on. So after Bobby Holt, the prosecution rests their case, basically saying, we've put on everyone that we're going to put on. If they had other witnesses that were under subpoena or that they had planned to testify, they were not going to have them testify. So again, we don't know if Jill was supposed to be for the prosecution or the defense, but Jill Duggar was not being called. Brittany says, shout out to Bobby for real. Very surprised with that one. The podcast is the Sojo file. Okay. Now, once they rested, they brought up their forensic person. So their expert's name is Michelle Bush. She claims that 50% of the cases that she does are around CSAM. She examined his MacBook, 5 thumb drives, SD cards, iPhones, and an HP desktop. She went to Homeland Security's office to examine the HP for 5 days, and she had to travel there because of the CSAM. She had to sign a contract. If you guys paid attention during the pretrial stuff, shout out to Bobby and her husband. Yes, shout out to Bobby and her husband. Good jobs. So they were making this big stink about how the computer couldn't be given to them and how she would have to travel. And they literally had to tell them that, you don't get to take the computer because it's evidence. In this case, it contains contraband on it. And no, you don't get to take the computer. So they had to go there, and they were bitching about that in the testimony about how she had to sign a contract. She wasn't permitted to connect to the internet. She had to delete her hard drive after so that she didn't spread any of the material. She found no evidence of it on his MacBook or his Mac devices. If it was there at some point, it had been deleted. She would have seen it. He had the MacBook from 2014 to 2019. There were several partitions on the HP desktop, and she said it was normal. She said there was no trace of CSAM on the Windows side, so literally nothing's different than anything that was said. Then let's see. She continued, she said that the Linux partition was installed on May 13th. The same afternoon, several files were opened from an external thumb drive as well. So they're going with the stupid thumb drive. Oh, here comes Amy's name again. So Justin Gelfand asked if the files in question were opened on Josh's personal devices, and Michelle said no. She testified they looked for them. She said 2 files, a quiz and a quiz mommy, Amy Duggar King, are not the same files. The Amy King Duggar file was on Josh's MacBook, and the Sun reporter in the courtroom claimed the prosecution said it could have been on the thumb drive, suggesting that Gelfand tried to debunk the theory today to somehow show someone else plugged in the thumb drive as well. She said it wasn't the same files, but I don't know if she actually gave proof on which files they were. So why he has a file with Amy's name on it is so gross. Anyways, she said there was only one user on the partition side, Del1. She said it could be auto-generated because the underscore usually isn't allowed for our user-generated names. The prosecution proved in their questioning of James Futrell that the username was not auto-generated. So he says it was not. She says it could have been. She recreated the process of the HP computer, went through from May 13th through the 15th. She tried to sign up for Linux. The computer displayed an error when she tried to use Del 1. She said the username should only have lowercase numbers or dashes, which could show that the username was auto-generated. She noted no Dell computer was seized in the case, which is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if it was a Dell 1 title or if it was a Linux. He installed it on an HP. He focuses and hammers on things that are irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You can use a Dell product is Windows. When Dell doesn't have their own operating system. Have you had a Dell computer? I have. You can run Windows on there. In a possible attempt to suggest that the username was auto-generated and the mystery thumb drive was put in a computer before the partition was installed. Don't think so. Anyways, again, hammers on things that are completely irrelevant. He moved on to the router in the car lot, and she explained that the wire connects from the router to the device to the Ethernet. She couldn't examine it because it was not seized. She called the router extremely important. Okay, literally, James Futrell said it's literally never important, period, in these cases, because it hosted the IP address and they would know what devices were connected to it and how often. Oh, the router doesn't matter. They were logged into his computer and the content was found on his computer. I think they're using this as a way to try to bypass and downplay the receiving side. So here's my belief, is that they know they're screwed when it comes to the possession charge. They know what was found on his computer. They know that the possession charge they can't get around. So what they need to try to bypass is the receiving charge. Okay. The receiving charge is that he willingly received content that was illegal and that he did so, and in that process downloaded, which is a completely separate charge as possession. Now, in this case, the possession charge actually is the one that has the bigger, the possession charge has the higher, like, mandatory minimum of 20 years. But still, like, I think they're just trying to get doubt around the receiving side. Like, oh, no, it's the router. We don't know. Yeah, trying to cut the jail time in half, pretty much. Anyways. She said that the Linux already had Ubuntu and transmission programs so that he didn't have to download them. It would allow access to the dark web. She walked the court through a demonstration in open transmission, went to Firefox, looked for torrent downloads of a movie, and showed that it was wanted to open via transmission, which was default. On his MacBook, she explained that it was installed in 2017 and was used to download a Hollywood film. which again shows that Josh has the experience with this program. I don't really know how they think that this is beneficial, but that's just my opinion. All you're proving is that Josh knows how to use this program. This is found on his computer. They're not talking about what was found on the computer. They're ignoring what was found on the computer. They're just talking about little stupid things that have nothing to do with this, trying to create any sort of reasonable doubt. Yes. I already did the timestamps, and the timestamps were also provided by so the timestamps were also provided back in May. So if you guys go back into my catalog for Josh Duggar, there was a document in the bond hearing that had all of the timestamps in the document all written out. And then I actually told you about this document back in May. And we went through all the timestamps of he was doing this, and then he was doing this, and then he was doing this, and then he was doing this. So yeah, they're trying to confuse the jury. But routers are literally irrelevant. Yeah. You're proving that he used it. You're downloading a video, a Hollywood video, which is not like approved by the IBLP. And also you're illegally downloading a video. The timestamps don't lie. Actually, you're true. Okay. So that's what they are working on. Stealing movies is against the IBLP. Well, stealing in general. Watching Hollywood movies is against the IBLP. Okay, so I'm trying to think here if there's anything else. Okay, federal prisons. Now, the next question was, who else are the witnesses? I don't know. I think this expert will be on the, they're having like a long lunch right now, I guess, because there is they're going over evidence, apparently. No, he will actually not get 10 years. He actually already denied the 10-year plea deal. So it's unlikely that he would get 10 deal. The plea agreement was actually a 10-year offer. And when he was at the bond hearing, they said that the mandatory minimum for the possession that he had was 20 years because of the age of the children. So he possessed content that had children that were babies, and it was a minimum of 20 for that one. A mandatory minimum means it's the minimum time that they have to, like, it's the mandatory minimum sentence. Hope that makes sense. So if it's up to 20 years and it's a mandatory minimum of 20 years, that means it would be a 20-year sentence because he hits all of the factors for that. So the way that the judge at the bond hearing explained it was that he would have 20 years for one and another 5 years for another. Now, would he do these consecutively or concurrently? The current way that it's set up with the federal government is the default is concurrently so that the sentences are run at the same time. But it's really up to the judge. So the judge is the one that decides if they're going to do it consecutively or concurrently. Default in the federal system is concurrently. He could decide, I think you are more dangerous than that, so I'm going to do them consecutively, one after another. I don't think there's any reasonable doubt, but that's my opinion. I don't think they have anything here. A router is irrelevant. It doesn't provide any relevant information. The content was found on his computer. They were logged into his computer. They downloaded directly from his computer. The information was found nowhere else but his computer. When they tapped into that IP address and were downloading from that IP addresses, they found evidence of all of those videos on the computer. I just don't see it being anything more than just blowing smoke. The judge is the one who decides on the sentence in federal court. Okay. Yeah, it's up to 20 years per charge. Okay. Now, the other thing I wanted to tell you guys about was let's see. the federal courts. So people are all like, oh, Josh is going to get conjugal visits in prison. No, not allowed in federal prison. Okay. So Josh Duggar, if convicted, would be considered what's called an SO. We don't need to write it out in the chat. We already know what this kind of crime is. CSAM crimes are considered CM crimes. So they are labeled as SOs, and there are only so many prisons in the federal system that can handle these types of prisoners. Prisoners are eligible based on certain factors for various federal prisons. This is not Club Med or Club Fed, as everyone would like you to believe. So when someone's convicted of a crime like Josh, a judge can say, not only are you going to go through this, but I'm also going to require that you go through a SO program, okay? A program that is for offenders like Josh. Got it? It's like a treatment program. So there's only like a few of the facilities that offer this in the country, okay? So they're housed in either medium security. They're usually housed in what are called medium security facilities. And his length of sentence is going to be what determines where he'll go, okay? So a prisoner that has more than 30 years of a sentence, they are placed in a high security facility, which is actually the United States penitentiaries. And those are like the big, where the worst offenders go, okay? Prisoners that have less than 30 years are eligible for medium security. And then those that have less than 20 years can go to low security. They're not allowed to be in minimum security. So minimum security are the ones that have no guards. It's like they're literally living in like a dormitory setting, and they can work and then go back there. Like it's the work program. They're not allowed for the work program. So low security is dormitory settings. There are still correctional officers. They are still locked up. They don't get to go home. Medium security, they're housed in cells. High security, the penitentiary, they're housed in cells. They are put in specific facilities with other offenders like themselves to reduce the overall propensity of hurting them, okay? They're going to put them in a place where they're going to be less attacked, and they are the most vulnerable of offenders out there. So they're the most at risk for being hurt by other prisoners. And a low security facility, ironically, has the least likelihood of an offender being hurt. Doesn't mean that's where he'll go. That's usually where they go if you only have like less than 20 years or 10 years or something like that. So they're generally housed in facilities that have SO treatment programs. And if it's ordered by the court, they have to go through the program, but someone can voluntarily say that they're going to do the program. So the programs are offered at a low security one that's in Texas called Seagoville. There is in Elkin, Ohio, and then there's another one in Englewood, Colorado. There's a medium security facility, which is in Petersburg, Virginia, Mariana, Florida, and then there's one in Marion, Illinois. And then there is the high security, which is in Tucson, Arizona. Medium security facilities hold prisoners in cells. The low ones are dormitory settings. And I'm guessing based on the sentence length that he's likely to end up in a medium security facility, maybe high security, but I don't know. But there's none of these are anywhere near Arkansas, where Josh is. You don't want him here in Colorado. These are all the ones that I got directly from their website. So Tucson, Petersburg, Mariana, Marion, Seagoville, Elkin, and Englewood. That's all from the federal, all of this came from the federal website. So, and that's where the treatment programs are offered. I don't know about the Leavenville. but it's not offered. That's this. I got all this information from the Department of the BOP, the Bureau of Prison something. Okay. So there's, again, nowhere near, and they can be moved around based on whatever they're doing. Now, how much time does he have to serve if he's convicted? So according to the BOP, you can earn up to 54 days off a year for good behavior. It's less than you get off in state programs. So basically, he can get a few weeks off, less than 2 months off per year. If he were to be, say he were going to be sentenced to, say he gets 25 years, for instance. If you times 54 by 25, it ends up being like 1,300 days. It's about 3.6 years that he would get off for good behavior. Good behavior, though, means no disciplinary actions, and it's not a given. So just because you've been good for 5 years doesn't mean you don't, every single year, they'll give you like an estimated day of release based on meeting all of the requirements. But if you don't meet the requirements, you cannot get time off for good behavior. And good behavior is literally getting a disciplinary action. Okay. He doesn't deserve good behavior. There's not one in Siberia. Florida was damaged. Okay, yes. And then generally, in cases like this, they do X amount of years of post-supervised release. And generally, they have to register also as SOs. So North Korea. He can't go to Arkansas because they don't have the they don't have the treatment programs. He can only go to one of the facilities that has a treatment program. Not even China wants him. Agreed. Okay. And then finally, new photos of Austin and Joy. Looks like oh, he does look like he was crying. I'll show you. So here's what I was told about Austin and Joy is they have been very about business when they are there. They're not there really conversing with family. They've been very to themselves. This has been very traumatic for her. She's been very overwhelmingly sad. Okay, yeah. She looks really upset here. Clearly very upset. I feel so bad for them. I can't even tell you how bad I feel for them. My heart aches for Joy and Austin having to find out this way. My heart aches for the jurors that have to watch this and see this content. But yeah, he definitely. Let me see if I can grab that. He looks upset for sure. And there's one actually where he looks really emotional. Let's see where it is. This one. Give me 1 second. This one looks like the worst of his, though. Hold on. He looks really upset here. This one, he looks like he's crying. Yep, he was crying. Clearly, you can tell. Look at him. Oh, God. I feel so bad for Austin. Can you imagine being married to someone and this is like literally how you find out? And this is how you find out is by someone testifying in your brother-in-law's trial that this happened to your sister-in-law, and that this is your father-in-law lied to you. He lied to his daughter. Everyone lied about what happened. They made Joy think that it didn't happen, that it wasn't that serious. Like he just, I feel so sad. I feel so sad for them. Yeah. Austin is very like stoic, very even, like very even, very pragmatic. He doesn't usually look mad. I would say Austin generally is like smiling or just very stoic, not generally mad. You don't get a lot of emotions out of him. Although if you watched Joy's birth, he did cry when she gave birth to their daughter. So I feel so bad. I hope there are 1,000 people that know them and lifting them up. I know, it's so sad. He does look shattered. So I'm heartbroken for the girls. I'm heartbroken for, I guess Jessa left after the testimony of Bobby Holt this morning, so she didn't return. It's really odd that somehow they didn't capture a photo of Jessa at court. But yeah. Anyways, Josh is not supposed to be around any children, and he's barred from being around his siblings. He can only be around his children with Anna present. I don't think that Anna will move because she won't have the help with the kids. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. I mean, if say he was put in Florida, she could go move by her parents that live in Florida. But like if he's put in Arizona, they don't have any family in Arizona. And children are not automatically allowed in federal prisons. So that's the other thing. So adults are allowed, but if a child is going to go, they have to actually get special privilege and special permission. And it'll be up to the prison to determine whether or not if he's allowed to be around kids. He might not be allowed to see his kids. I think it would be better if he didn't see his kids. That's just my opinion. You're not forced to be a juror, but if you're called to the jury, you have to go. And you can get out of it if you meet certain requirements. If you can't be unbiased, that's how they go through the jury selection. But if you're picked, you're picked. You don't get to get out of it. It's if you register. Nothing. Well, I don't want to go into what was talked about with Jill. If you guys watched my video, rewind this or watch my video from last week. So that's, here. Oh, Laura. You know, it's, I don't think this is by accident. I have to say this, several of the Duggars have shown up today, and I truthfully believe they are showing up today because they don't have to hear about the truth. They get to hear Josh's defense, which has been regurgitated to them by their father. So by showing up today, they kind of take the coward's way out. They see Josh's defense. They don't see their own defense. They don't see any of the prosecution's like evidence about how the content was found. They intentionally, I believe, skipped that so they can feign ignorance. So here's Jason and James. And that is Laura behind them. If you're wondering if Laura supports Josh, she does. Those guys were seen talking with Josh. I still think it's wild that Laura DeMace is Jana's best friend. She also works for the Duggars. She's currently the tutor for the kids. So Laura DeMace is Jana's best friend. She works for the Duggars. She does, she tutors the kids. She does some of their social media stuff. She does a bunch of their videos. But yeah, somehow they don't have any photographs of Jessa. I don't know. Jessa was there, but they don't have any photographs of her. They are on. So that is them right now. They are showing up to avoid the actual truth of what happened. It's such a shame. They all needed this. Thanks. Thank you for your super chat. Move Austin taking. Oh, God. Let's not go there. Okay. So I think that's it for now. If we have more, I will do more later. Make sure before we go, you guys, yes, Jana supports her brother. So does Jessa. They are still on Jim Bob's payroll. So Jessa, Ben, all of them are still heavily indoctrinated and controlled by Jim Bob. They are there specifically for Josh. So I think overall, people are going to have to decide how they feel about that. You know, is supporting your brother who has a horrid background in all of this, is that acceptable? Is it not acceptable? What are you thinking about that? That kind of thing. Whether or not, you know, you're going to continue to support people that support Josh, that comes up to your personal preference and what you think and what you feel. I was hoping more kids would wake up. I think some of them just don't want to wake up. It's cognitive dissonance. It's easier for them not to see the truth. It's easier for them to pretend like it didn't happen. This happens all the time. And you can't force someone to believe something that they don't want to believe, sadly. And for some families, they would rather just be in denial than actually admit that their family member has done something terrible. And if any of you have a family member that has gone through anything like this, you can probably testify to that or say that some family members just simply do not want to deal with it. So to all of the people that sent super chats, hi again. I know that you've been essentially brainwashed, but seeing as though many of them have children themselves, this is very hard to understand. They have been brainwashed. It is hard to understand. They are definitely very brainwashed. They don't get the truth from their dad. They are being misled, lied to. It's just sad overall. So to everyone that has given a super chat, thank you guys so much. To the 8 new members that joined. We only have 1,600 likes and I have 10,000 of you guys watching. So do me a favor and please make sure before you go that you give this video a thumbs up. Share this with friends. And also, please make sure if you are not following me on Instagram that you do. I'll put my Instagram, give me 1 second, in the chat so that you can join. So you can follow me. I'm working very hard to get to 100,000 over on Instagram too. Oh, Barbie, thank you so much for your super chat. All right, so thank you guys so much. I'm hoping to get back here with a little bit more in a little while. Again, please give me some thumbs up before you go. Follow me on Instagram, comments, questions, concerned. Stephanie, thank you again for your super chats. Again, everyone that did super chats, everyone that was a member, your coverage is fabulous. Everyone hit the like button in video if you agree. Oh, I'll share that. Thank you, Katie. I'm going to see if I can connect with the podcaster to see if she has any more insight about what happened in court for the testimony. And make sure that you check out the Sojo files. It's SOJO. And check out her podcast. It's great. She does a really good job. She sticks to the facts. She's not presenting bias. She's just going straight what's happening in court if you want a like a blow by blow. All right, you guys, I'll be back later with more. Bye.